Steve Harvey is one of the most recognizable faces on television today, known for his wit, charm, and ability to connect with audiences. But his journey to success is a tale of perseverance, grit, and overcoming impossible odds. Born in 1957 in Welch, West Virginia, Steve's early life was shaped by poverty and hardship. Raised by his father, Jesse, a coal miner who worked tirelessly for a meager $5 a day, Steve learned early on about the value of hard work. His mother, Eloise, provided the balance with her faith and kindness, instilling in him the importance of prayer and resilience. But despite the love at home, the world outside was harsh, especially for a boy who struggled with a severe stutter. This stutter would shape Steve's childhood in ways few could understand, turning what should have been a voice of promise into a source of shame. A dream shattered, the 6th grade teacher's challenge. Steve Harvey's early dreams were almost crushed by the cruelty of childhood and a teacher who mocked his ambitions. In 6th grade, Steve was asked to write down what he wanted to be when he grew up. While most of the boys wrote practical careers, Steve dared to dream big. He wrote, "I want to be on TV." But his teacher didn't see potential. She saw mockery. "Do you know anyone on TV? Do you have family in Hollywood?" she asked, making Steve feel small and unworthy in front of his classmates. The laughter that followed stayed with Steve for years. But when he showed the paper to his father, Jesse didn't dismiss his dream. Instead, he said, "Put that paper in your drawer, and every morning you wake up, you look at it. Don't let nobody tell you what you can't be." This moment, though painful, would become the spark that kept Steve's dream alive. From stutter to silence, surviving through observation. While the stutter eventually faded, Steve Harvey's youth was defined by the feeling of being voiceless. With a mind filled with creativity, jokes, and aspirations, Steve's inability to speak clearly made each conversation an obstacle. Children would mock him, and his voice became a source of constant frustration. Steve learned to cope with this by becoming an observer, quietly watching people's faces and body language. His ability to read people and understand their emotions sharpened, and he became the funny guy in social situations, the one who could crack jokes and make people laugh. This skill would eventually serve him well, but it was born from years of frustration, loneliness, and the desperate need to survive. His stutter taught him the power of silence, a lesson that shaped both his comedy and his personal growth. The early struggles. Finding purpose in a lost world. By his mid-20s, Steve Harvey had lived many lives. He dropped out of college, worked in the Ford assembly line, sold insurance, and even worked as a mailman, but none of these jobs fulfilled him. He was the funny guy, the one who could make his coworkers laugh, but he had no clear direction. He was married with kids, but the weight of mediocrity was suffocating. At 27, Steve found himself at a crossroads. He was too old to start a career in entertainment, and his dreams seemed foolish. Yet, his charisma and magnetic personality continued to pull people in. The desire to change his life was growing stronger. And despite the doubts, Steve knew deep down that he couldn't settle for the life he had. His journey was about to take a dramatic turn, but it would cost him everything he had. The breaking point, the grit to keep going. One night in Florida, Steve had driven for hours to perform at a club, stealing gas to make it there. He did the show, and the crowd loved him. But when it came time to collect his payment, the promoter refused to pay him. "Come back next week," the promoter said, leaving Steve without any money to survive. That night, Steve sat in his car, crying uncontrollably. It was the lowest point of his life, and he questioned everything. "God, if you're real, you got to get me out of this," he prayed. He had nothing left but his dreams and the memory of his father's words. Quitting was an option, but Steve knew he couldn't give up. His survival was tied to his refusal to stop. He kept driving, kept pushing, and kept refining his craft. Those 3 years in the Ford Tempo were not wasted. They were shaping him into the man he would become. The turning point, Showtime at the Apollo. In late 1989, Steve received a phone call that would change his life. A casting director from the legendary Apollo Theater in Harlem asked him to audition for the host position on Showtime at the Apollo. Steve didn't have money for a plane ticket or a cab, but he knew this was his chance. He borrowed money, made it to New York, and walked into the Apollo Theater, a place where legends were born, but where mediocrity was swiftly booed off the stage. The pressure was intense, but Steve took a deep breath, grabbed the mic, and commanded the room. For the first time in years, the Ford Tempo felt like a distant memory. He was no longer the homeless man. He was Steve Harvey, and he belonged on that stage. He got the job, and for the next 7 years, he became the face of Black comedy in America. The Steve Harvey Show, a new beginning. By 1996, Steve's career was solidifying. He was cast in The Steve Harvey Show, which became a cultural touchstone for African American households. The sitcom, where Steve played a high school music teacher, resonated with millions. And for 6 seasons, Steve brought his humor and authenticity into homes across the nation. But despite the success, Steve felt unfulfilled. Comedy clubs and sitcoms were great, but Steve wanted more. He wanted to take comedy to new heights, and he saw an opportunity to do just that. The Kings of Comedy, a historic tour. In 1997, Steve, along with fellow comedians Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hewley, and Bernie Mac, launched the Kings of Comedy Tour. The concept was simple but revolutionary. Bring the biggest names in comedy to arenas, not clubs. Promoters laughed at them, saying comedy couldn't fill basketball arenas. But Steve and his team bet on themselves, and it paid off. The tour became the highest-grossing comedy tour in history, selling out arenas across the country. Steve, the master of ceremonies, became the glue that held the show together. His larger-than-life presence and sharp wit made him the star of the show, and the world finally saw the man who had once slept in his car as a true comedy king. The next chapter, reinvention and growth. By the early 2000s, Steve Harvey had reached the pinnacle of success. He had conquered comedy, television, and even the business world. But the entertainment industry was evolving, and Steve knew that in order to stay relevant, he would need to reinvent himself. The climb to the top was hard, but staying there required even more determination and adaptability. Steve's journey was far from over, and his story continues to inspire millions around the world, reminding us that no matter how difficult life gets, it is never too late to chase your dreams.